Viewer discretion is advised.
Shauna thought she knew the man she married. Tony, on the other hand, was always preaching about change, about the lessons he learned in prison, and about becoming a better person. But one thing she didn't know was that Tony's 25-year criminal record was just the beginning, and the lies he told her would cost her everything. Now watch this. This is Shauna Roy on Facebook Live, talking to people about relationships and domestic violence. Pay attention to what he's saying here, because knowing what we know now, this is going to hit different.
While I was in prison, and I know a lot of people be hating, man. You know, when black businesses be successful, they start hating you. Then, you know what I'm saying? We like the stuff that you're doing for the community, but we want to hear you speak. What's really on your mind, right? So I said, dang, y'all really want me to go there? Okay, cool. So let's talk about the reason why. Now to go, what's up, my baby? I just shouted you out, man. Had everybody on here to send you some prayers. I know you just lost your baby father, so take a moment of silence, have some prayers for you. I love you. You're a good artist. You performing on the 4th, so can't wait to see you. Hey, big baby, what's the question again that you asked? I missed the question. Run it back one more time for me. Okay, the question is this. You know how we as men, right? We'll take a woman through a whole lot. And I know me, man. I'm guilty of that shit. I ain't gonna lie. We'll take a woman through a whole lot, right? And then y'all just be forgiving us, right? Over and over again. And sometimes I be like, dang, man, I wonder, is she really this serious? Like, she love me this much that she willing to forgive me for some of the things that I did? And maybe it'd be like, you know, like you cheat on a woman, you know what I'm saying? That's horrible. That's one of the biggest pet peeves of a woman, like, don't cheat, right? So we all know that. But sometimes we as men, we still do, you know what I'm saying? And some of us working on it, trying to get it right, right? And so the woman will forgive you over and over and over again, you know what I'm saying? And I ain't talking about the niggas that be beating women. I ain't with that shit. So all y'all who are on there, just get off my page. I ain't talking about y'all. Y'all niggas need some help. Because at the end of the day, man, if you got to beat a woman up, you shouldn't even be with her. I'm 6'6", 280. I will never hit you. Now, I might have some other issues in the relationship, but I will never hit you. So that ain't what I'm talking about. Don't forgive a motherfucker for hitting you. He hit you, get rid of that bitch ass nigga. That's what it is.
So here we have Shauna Roy speaking passionately about how he doesn't support hitting women, talking about relationship dynamics and forgiveness. The man sounds convinced, doesn't he? Like he really believes what he's saying. But here's the thing that's gonna make your skin crawl. While Tony was making these statements about being against domestic violence, he was actively hurting the woman he promised to love and protect. Let me break down what really happened here, because this case is one of those that shows you how someone can look you straight in the face and lie without blinking. We're talking about Shauna Roy, a 41-year-old woman who thought she found love with someone who claimed he'd changed his life around. Instead, she found herself trapped in a nightmare that ended in the most horrific way possible. Now, before we get into what went down that night in July 2023, let me tell you about Shauna, because she deserves to be remembered for who she was, not just how her life ended. Shauna Roy was born on June 12, 1982, in Saginaw, Michigan. She was the baby of the family, the youngest of 3 children, and from what everyone who knew her says, she was the type of person who just made life brighter. Her childhood was everything you'd want for a kid, filled with laughter, love, and a family that really had her back. When Shauna got to Saginaw High School, she didn't just coast through. This woman was involved in everything: student council, cheerleading squad, juggling her academics, while still finding time to help other people. That's just who she was, someone who saw a need and tried to fill it. After she graduated in 2000, she went to Delta College and majored in psychology and social work. And can we talk about that choice for a second? Psychology and social work. This woman wanted to help people for a living. That tells you everything you need to know about her heart. Shauna ended up working as a production operator at Next Year Automotive in Auburn Hills. Now that might not sound glamorous, but Shauna had bigger dreams. She wanted to open an adult foster care home back in her hometown. She wanted to create a safe space for people who needed it most. Her best friend Dominique always said Shauna was magnetic, you know? The type of person whose laugh could change the whole energy in a room. She had one child from a previous relationship and she was protective of her space and her family. Shauna was living her life, working toward her goals, being there for the people she loved. She had every reason to believe good things were coming her way. But in 2020, everything changed when she met Tony Roy online. Now let me tell you about Tony, because understanding who this man really was is crucial to understanding how this all went so wrong. Tony Roosevelt Roy had a criminal record that stretched back to 1998. We're talking about more than 2 decades of violence, drug charges, assault with intent to do great bodily harm, fleeing police, domestic violence charges. This man's record read like a warning label, but somehow Shauna never saw it. When they started talking online, Tony presented himself as someone who had learned from his mistakes. He talked about prison being a teacher, about how those hard years behind bars had made him a better man. He was charming, he was attentive, and he painted this picture of redemption that sounded real. You have to understand something about people like Tony. They don't walk up to you talking about their criminal record. They don't lead with the violence. They lead with the sob story. They lead with the change narrative. They make you believe that whatever they did before, that wasn't the real them. The real them is this person standing in front of you, telling you they love you. And Shauna, with her big heart and her desire to see the good in people, believed him. What started as casual online conversation turned into something that looked like love. Tony knew exactly what to say and when to say it. He talked about second chances, about building something real together, about how meeting Shauna made him want to be better. All the right words at all the right times. The relationship moved fast. Maybe too fast, but when you think you've found someone who gets you, who promises you the world, it's easy to get caught up. Tony was still on parole when they got serious, but he presented that as just paperwork, just something he had to deal with because of his past, not because of who he was now. On July 22nd, 2022, Shauna and Tony got married. She thought she was starting a new chapter with someone who had genuinely changed. She thought the worst thing about Tony was behind them both. But here's what Shauna didn't know, and this is the part that's going to make you understand just how deep this deception went. Tony had deliberately hidden the full extent of his criminal history from her. We're not talking about him just not mentioning it. We're talking about active deception, making her believe he was someone he wasn't. Dominique, Shauna's best friend, later revealed that Shauna had no idea about Tony's real past when she married him. Think about that for a second. You marry someone thinking you know who they are, thinking they've been honest with you about their history, and the whole time they've been lying about the most important thing, who they really are when nobody's watching. At first, things seemed okay. Tony was good at playing the reformed man. He made the right noises about change, about building a life together, about being the husband Shauna deserved. But you know what they say, you can't fake who you are forever. Eventually the real Tony started showing up. It started small, like it always does. Little restrictions on her movement. Questions about where she was going and who she was with. Accusations about her cheating. The kind of behavior that makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells in your own home. Shauna's friends started noticing changes in her. She wasn't calling as much, and when she did, there was something different in her voice. A tension that wasn't there before. But Shauna, like so many people caught in these situations, was trying to make it work. She loved the man she thought she married, and she was hoping that man would come back. But the man she thought she married never existed in the first place.
Alright, but back to what I was saying, like, you know how women can forgive you, right? But then the moment they do that shit to us, Woo, yeah, all hell break loose. And I'm trying to figure out, why are we built like that? Cause I know, I ain't gonna lie, man. I be really, like, if a woman hurt me, I be really hurt. Like, hurt. Like, hurt. Hey, see, look, this one I'm talking about, I be telling people, like, this one, all that player shit, when you be young, and you're around just hitting everything, it's just like, oh man, I'm having a ball. I got all the girls in the world. And you keep having this baby. You keep having this baby. You keep having this baby. You got another baby over here. Man, on Christmas, man, you be really stressed out, man. This one, all that player shit catch up with you. You gotta pop up all them houses, the different energies. Wondering if you got your kids the right stuff to make them happy. You know what I'm saying? This is my first year home, so it was a lot of stress on me, man. But shout out to my BMs too, man. They showed up for me, man. I said, let's keep everything personal, man, because I ain't trying to get this family mad because I ain't get this family something, or this child mother mad because I ain't do this one. So I just said, man, look, whatever I do for y'all, this for y'all. It's from the bottom of my heart. This how the new year look for me, for y'all, man. It's gonna be some real different changes, man. Some shit gonna change, and I hope y'all can follow along with me when I say this shit, right? You come with that negative energy, get that nigga away from you, man, or old girl away from you, or man or woman, however you want to put it. You know what I'm saying? Get him away from you, man.
Listen to how convincing he sounds. This is the version of Tony that Shauna fell in love with. The reformed man, the one who learned his lessons, the one who was ready to be better. But while Tony was posting about growth and change, something completely different was happening inside apartment 14B on Kings Lane in Burton, Michigan. Behind closed doors, the real Tony was starting to show himself. And let me tell you, it was nothing like the man Shauna thought she married. The controls started getting tighter. Tony began monitoring Shauna more closely, questioning her every move, accusing her of things that weren't happening. Friends who used to hear from Shauna regularly started noticing she wasn't calling as much. When she did call, something was different. There was a heaviness in her voice that hadn't been there before.
Dominique, her best friend, could feel something was wrong. Women, we know when our girls aren't okay, even when they're trying to hide it. But Shauna was caught in that cycle that so many women know too well, wanting to believe that the person you love is going to change, hoping that if you just try harder, if you're just patient enough, things will get better. But here's what Dominique found out later, and this is going to break your heart. Shauna had been confiding in her about what was really happening. She told Dominique about being struck, about being watched constantly, about living in fear of setting Tony off. Dominique begged her to get out, to come home to Saginaw where her family could protect her. But leaving isn't as simple as just walking away, especially when you're dealing with someone like Tony, someone who's spent decades perfecting the art of control and manipulation, someone who makes you believe that you're the problem, that you're the reason things are going wrong. Now here's where things get really disturbing. Remember how we started this whole conversation with Tony talking about being against domestic violence? While he was making those statements on social media, he was actively terrorizing the woman he promised to love. The level of deception, the way he could look directly into a camera and lie like that, that takes a special kind of person. Listen to this.
Appreciate y'all tuning in too, man. And giving my ratchet ass chance after chance after chance. Y'all still be loving me. I appreciate that. I know I keep fucking up and keep going to jail. Keep hurting people that love me. You know what I'm saying? People that believe in me. So I just want to tell y'all, I love y'all, man. My family, friends, exes, my girls, whatever, my homies. You know what I'm saying? My baby Gigi. I appreciate y'all.
Here's Tony again talking about appreciating the people in his life, thanking people for believing in him, talking about not wanting to hurt people who love him. The audacity of this man to say these words while he was systematically destroying Shauna's life is something else. Can we talk about this pattern for a minute? Because this isn't uncommon. The people who hurt us the most are often the same people who can stand up publicly and say all the right things about love, about change, about being better. They know exactly what to say to make themselves look good while they're doing the complete opposite in private. As time went on, the situation in that apartment got worse. Tony's control over Shauna became more intense, more frightening. She was walking on eggshells, never knowing what might set him off, never knowing if today would be the day things escalated beyond what she could handle. And then came July 2023. Shauna had reached her limit. She couldn't take it anymore. She made a decision that took incredible courage. She told Tony she was leaving him. She was going back to Saginaw, back to her family, back to safety. For someone like Shauna, who had been systematically isolated and terrorized, making that decision to leave would have taken everything she had. She knew her family was there waiting for her. She knew Dominique would support her. She had a way out, and she was going to take it.
But Tony wasn't about to let that happen. On July 14th, 2023, Shauna's decision to leave triggered something in Tony that was beyond reason, beyond human decency. The mask came off completely, and what was underneath was pure violence and rage. Inside apartment 14B, Tony attacked Shauna with a brutality that I can't even fully describe while keeping this appropriate for the platform. What I can tell you is that he used his hands, he used a metal pipe, and finally he used a belt around her neck. Shauna fought for her life, but Tony was determined to make sure she never left him. After Shauna was gone, Tony did something that shows you just how calculated and cold this man really was. He began the process of trying to cover up what he'd done, dismembering her body and placing her remains in plastic bags in the bathroom. Then he spent time trying to clean the apartment, thinking he could somehow erase the evidence of what he'd done. But here's where Tony's arrogance really shows. The next day, July 15th, he actually picked up Shauna's phone and sent a text message to Dominique, pretending to be Shauna. He thought he was smart enough to fool her best friend, but he made a mistake that immediately gave him away. The text said Shauna was fine, just busy, but there were no emojis, none of Shauna's warmth, none of her personality. And then Tony made the fatal error. He addressed Dominique as honey, something Shauna never did. The moment Dominique read that text, she knew something was terribly wrong. That one word, honey, was like an alarm bell going off. This wasn't Shauna. This was someone pretending to be Shauna. And that meant Shauna was in serious trouble. Dominique immediately reached out to Shauna's mother and sister. None of them had heard from her. The silence was too loud, too wrong. They knew they needed help, so they called police and requested a welfare check at the Burton apartment. When officers arrived at apartment 14B, around 7:20 p.m., they knocked on the door. No response. They had to force entry, and what they found inside was a scene that would stay with them forever. There was evidence everywhere that something violent had happened. Tools were scattered near the bathroom, and in the bathtub, they found plastic bags containing human remains. It didn't take long to confirm what they all feared. This was Shauna Roy, and she had been gone for days. But here's the thing that made this case even more urgent. Tony Roy was nowhere to be found. Using cell phone data, police tracked his movements and discovered he had fled Burton and gone to Detroit, and he wasn't alone. There was another woman with him, and police believed she was being held against her will. This man had just taken Shauna's life, and now he potentially had another victim. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Law enforcement immediately put out arrest warrants for Tony, charging him with open homicide and mutilation of remains. They alerted Michigan State Police and Detroit Police Department. This wasn't just a manhunt now, this was a race against time to save another woman's life. For 3 days, Tony Roy was a ghost. But police were tracking his every digital footprint, using cell phone data, license plate readers, surveillance cameras. They knew he was in Detroit, and they knew he had that woman with him. Then, just after midnight, on July 17th, Michigan State troopers spotted Tony's car near Telegraph Road and 7 Mile Road in Detroit. Inside the vehicle were Tony and the unidentified woman. What happened next was going to end this nightmare, but not the way anyone wanted. Now watch what happens when police approach the vehicle. You're about to see exactly how this all came to an end. As troopers moved toward the car, Tony pulled out a handgun. He pointed it at himself, then turned it toward the woman in the passenger seat. Officers had seconds to make a decision that would determine whether this woman will live or become Tony's second victim.
Yeah. Let's stay there. Roll down the window and put the gun outside the car. Roll down the passenger window and drop the gun outside the car.
Gun sir, gun sir!
The troopers opened fire. Tony Roy was pronounced gone at the scene. The woman suffered minor injuries from shattered glass, but she survived.
Get her out! Get her out! Get her out! Come on! Come on! Come on!
Police recovered the weapon from the vehicle, and it was registered to Tony. They also found Shauna's belongings in the car, her ID, her phone, her purse. These were direct evidence linking him to what happened in that Burton apartment. The woman was later interviewed by authorities. She had no involvement in Shauna's case, and police believe she may have been Tony's next intended victim, or simply someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But here's the part that's going to make you angry about how this whole situation could have been prevented. Just 3 days before Shauna lost her life, July 11th, 2023, Tony Roy was declared an absconder by the Michigan Department of Corrections. He had violated his parole terms and disappeared from supervision. 3 days. Let that sink in. The system knew Tony was missing. They knew he was a violent offender with decades of crimes behind him. They knew he was supposed to be monitored, and somehow he slipped through the cracks just long enough to take an innocent woman's life. When news of this case broke, the community reaction was immediate, and it was furious. Social media exploded with posts about Shauna, about Tony, about how someone with his record was walking free in the first place. People wanted answers. How does a man with a 25-year history of violence just disappear from parole supervision? How does the system fail this badly?
Continuing coverage, a man accused of killing and dismembering his wife shot and killed by police. Burton police say it started Saturday when officers responded to a welfare check at Kings Lane Apartments.
Investigators say they received reports of a woman inside who was dead. TV5's Lanita Brooks joins us live from Burton with details. Lanita?
Burton police responded to Kings Lane Apartments for a welfare check just after 7 o'clock Saturday night. It was then when they arrived that they found a horrifying crime scene. They discovered 41-year-old Shauna Roy had been completely dismembered. Her body parts had been placed in garbage bags and set in the bathtub. It was then when officials determined her husband, 44-year-old Tony Roy, had killed her, mutilated her body, and left it in the apartment. A warrant for his arrest was issued Monday. Michigan State Police attempted to arrest Roy in Detroit during a traffic stop at about 11:40 that night. Roy then met officers with a firearm, pointing the gun on himself, and then at a female passenger who was in the car with him. Officials say as he was pointing the gun towards that passenger, he was shot by multiple troopers, killing him on scene. As for the passenger, MSP says she suffered minor injuries from glass fragments and she will be okay. And anyone who has any additional information is urged to contact police as this investigation is still ongoing. We're live in Burton. Lanita Brooks, WNEM, TV5.
Comments poured in from people demanding accountability, wanting to know how many other violent offenders are out there unsupervised, how many other women are at risk, because the system isn't doing its job. But let's talk about Dominique for a moment, because her story is important here. That text message that felt wrong, that one word honey that saved potentially more lives by getting police involved quickly. Dominique knew her friend. She knew how Shauna communicated, and she trusted her instincts when something didn't feel right. This is something we all need to remember. When someone you care about starts acting differently, when their communication changes, when something just feels off, trust that feeling. Dominique's quick thinking and knowledge of her friend's habits is what led police to that apartment, and ultimately to Tony. In the days after Tony's death and the discovery of Shauna's remains, the community rallied around her memory. A candlelight vigil was held, drawing dozens of people who came to honor Shauna's life and demand change. Purple ribbons representing domestic violence awareness were tied around the area. People shared stories about Shauna's kindness, her dreams of opening that foster care home, her commitment to helping others. But the investigation wasn't over. Authorities continued processing evidence, waiting for autopsy results, building a complete picture of what happened in those final days. What they found confirmed what everyone already suspected. This was a crime fueled by rage and control, committed by a man who couldn't accept that the woman he claimed to love wanted to be free of him. Here's what really gets me about this case. Tony spent years perfecting his public image. He made those social media posts about change and growth. He recorded videos talking about not wanting to hurt people who loved him. He presented himself as someone who had learned from his mistakes and was ready to be better. But the real Tony, the one Shauna lived with, was completely different. He was controlling, violent, and ultimately lethal. The disconnect between who he pretended to be and who he actually was is staggering. This brings up some serious questions about how we identify people who are genuinely changed versus people who have just gotten better at hiding who they really are. How do we protect women like Shauna from people like Tony? How do we fix a system that allows violent offenders to disappear from supervision at the exact wrong time?
Shauna Roy should still be here. She should be working toward her dream of opening that foster care home. She should be raising her child, spending time with Dominique, making her family laugh. Instead, she's gone because a man who claimed to love her couldn't handle the idea of her being free. And here's what makes this even more tragic. Shauna was doing everything right. She had a support system, she had family who would have protected her, she had a friend like Dominique who was paying attention and ready to help. She made the decision to leave, which takes incredible courage. But sometimes, even when you do everything right, the system fails you in the worst possible way. The lessons from Shauna's story are painful but necessary. First, trust your instincts about the people in your life. If someone's behavior doesn't match their words, believe the behavior. Second, stay connected to your support system. Dominique's quick action potentially saved other lives because she knew Shauna well enough to recognize when something was wrong. Third, we need to demand better from our criminal justice system. A violent offender with Tony's history shouldn't be able to just disappear from supervision. There should be immediate consequences. Immediate action, immediate protection for potential victims. Finally, we need to understand that domestic violence doesn't always look like what we expect. It can be hidden behind social media posts about love and change. It can be disguised as redemption stories and second chances. The most dangerous people are often the ones who are best at convincing others they've changed. Before you fall in love with someone, make sure you have an idea of who they really are. Don't just fall for words. Run a background check, ask questions. This world is full of evil, and some people are worse than the devil. Shauna Roy's name is now part of a larger conversation about domestic violence, parole supervision, and the systems that are supposed to protect the most vulnerable among us. Her story exposes gaps that aren't just policy failures, they're life and death issues. What do you think could have been done differently to save Shauna's life? How do we identify people who are genuinely reformed versus people who are just better at hiding their true nature? What changes need to happen to ensure someone like Tony Roy can never harm another person? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this case moved you, please like and share this video. Every view helps keep Shauna's story alive and might help prevent another tragedy like this one. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, trust your instincts. They might just save a life.